Hey, everybody, this is Dustin back with another episode of Bushwhacking History in Buffalo with Berserker Bear. And today we have a special guest, good friend of mine, Neil, aka TorontoJewBear, in the house from Toronto.
North of
So
the
he's,
border, baby.
there you go, right? Um, Welcome. Thank you for coming on. I think we should be able to lay some gravy here about the falls.
I
And
am I am north of the border on the wrong side of the Iron Curtain, my friend.
you have the better falls, though.
We have the better falls. We have the better view of the falls. We have the better downtown because Niagara Falls, New York. Frankly, not much to be said for Niagara Falls, New York. Probably some historical buildings there, but oof,
How
it's a
dare
little
you?
rundown.
Yes, 100% I agree. The Canadian side is awesome, Clifton Hill. My wife and I used to like to take the ride from the Peace Bridge on the Canadian side from there to Clifton Hill because it's such a beautiful ride, all the houses, and you're on the Niagara River. Unfortunately, you have to look over at the American side that has, the highway and the Hutley plant and stuff like that. So you guys did it right
Mhm,
over there, Neil.
mhm.
Um,
We lucked out. We lucked out because of geography. The British held the good ground.
that's the
But
gravy.
I'll tell you guys, Dustin and I met through the Owen Benjamin Bear community, and I reached out to Dustin when I saw the first couple of his videos when he was still filming stuff on his camera off his screen, old school OG Berserker Bear style, and I love the stuff he was doing. I have a history degree myself. I have a 4-year history degree from the University of Western Ontario. I'm not a practicing historian, so to speak, but I do have that background. And I love the way he was uh, analyzing stuff in history from all angles. You know, we're not just sticking to the books. We're not just sticking to the official stories. We're not just sticking to what's been told to us from the mainstream sources, but digging deep and bushwhacking it himself on the ground. So I reached out, thought it was awesome, and we touched base several times. And the big thing we wanted to do, but I'm still on the wrong side of the Iron Curtain here, so Dustin can't join me and do this. But I'm just going to share my screen for 1 second. For about a year and a half, we've been planning on bushwhacking this place together. I haven't. You've probably seen it, Dustin, but I'm going to bring. Oh shoot! I think I screwed that up. Hold on. Share my screen.
You're good, bro.
Click the screen arc. I screwed. You know what? I screwed up my
Welcome,
share. Anyway,
welcome
if you
everybody
want to
in the
bring
chat.
up, if you can bring up Dustin, the Toronto, because I screwed up my, I blocked my screen sharing. Look up Toronto Power Generating Authority building in Niagara. This place, you wouldn't believe it. You can drive by this thing 1,000 times. It's along the Niagara Parkway,
Niagara.
along the Niagara or Toronto Power Generating Station, Niagara. And we were going to bushwhack this place together. Yeah, put in Niagara there. And
I forget we got to show the screen here. Hit play. Okay,
there it
yeah,
is. Yeah,
I've
and
done this one. Yeah.
hit the pictures.
Okay.
So this place is right now, they've got it hidden at the side of a highway. You could drive by it 1,000 times. You probably won't even notice it because they've got just a gate around it. They don't open it to the public. Uh, and this is the kind of thing that gets your mind. Once you get on the idea of hidden history, of grabbled history, of things that may not be exactly what they tell us, this is the kind of thing that really catches your eye. So we got to do this building one day, Dustin. Come hell,
Yeah,
we're gonna send you across the falls in a barrel. I'm gonna pick you up at the shore, and we'll bring you in.
I'm down for sure. Eventually, hopefully, one day we won't have to do that, and this stuff lifts. Shout out to what's going on. Um, but yeah, I've been wanting to check. I've actually showcased. I don't know if I did an in depth on that building directly, but I definitely showed it before in one of my videos. And exactly what Neil said. You see the that's it right there. This is where I think maybe where you're saying, Neil, where it could be an old dam back in the day because these weirs look like they had to have manufactured them somehow with the water gone. And
Mhm. Now there is a tunnel. So that building had an intake because that was a power generating station. It had an intake and a giant tunnel that I guess took the water in through the turbines in that building, and then opened up right below the falls, like under where the falls are falling right now. So
that's
apparently
right.
you
You know
can.
what? There is a, you can actually see that tunnel. It's right here, Neil. There's a YouTube video that I shared back in the day where a guy went, I think I might have shared it to you too. He went in there and so that tunnel, I believe what you're saying, Neil, it
Mhm.
goes underneath. So the one that I just showed, this is not the one that Neil was referring to. This is the one, this is the American side tunnel that connects upstream down to the Sholkoff. I just wanted to show that as an example. What Neil's saying is there's a tunnel from this former Toronto Power generating station underneath, and then it comes out right here. That's it right there. Now, let me know. Hit fire. Check this out. Why not? I just cited it, so why not use it? Okay. You guys want to go and check out a really cool episode? Niagara Falls. And I think this dude actually, if I could find the video right quick, it's a really cool. That's why I got the picture for the thumbs here. This is a cool video to watch, and there's a gentleman that actually gets down into that this one right here. So if you search Niagara Falls tunnels, this is for the listeners on YouTube, there is a video called Exploring a Retired Hydroelectric Power Plant and Tunnels, exploring the Canadian Niagara Power William B. Ranke generating station. He goes into those tunnels. You know, he gets down in there, and matter of fact, I'm sure we're going to see a commercial. Ugh.
Oof,
So he gets into that tunnel. I'll show it
that's
right now.
wild. Yeah, you can get in there, but yeah, they don't open it to the public. But that would be a hell of a tourist destination if you could actually, if they could sell tickets to that, because it's pretty awesome, and it's a huge tunnel. It's like, what is it, 20 feet or something in there. But this kind of thing, though, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. But it also like, so what I love about what Dustin does and what a lot of alternative history researchers do is you look at this stuff and you can just take it at face value. This was the
That's it.
hydro plant, or you can look at it and say, okay, what are the other options that could have been possible here? See, you got like red brick walls, and the big thing that you have to look at with Niagara is the geology of the area. Okay, and Dustin, you mentioned this to me one time before because we kicked around some ideas before, but just between the two of us, one of them is that possibly the Niagara Falls, the Horseshoe Falls, that's right behind. We were just showing there, right behind the power station, which is the famous part of Niagara Falls everybody sees. You take the boat across it, etc. That it's some kind of old dam that broke. And if you put it side by side with the Hoover Dam, you can see the shape that it would be very similar, except Niagara Falls looks like it's broken away at the back. That's one possibility. But the other possibility is to look exactly what you're showing here on the page.
Remember
The
we were
whole
taught this in school, the Dolomite Shale, or
You
what? I
got
remember
it.
learning about that in elementary school, Neil.
You got it. So for mining purposes, this is very valuable land because of this shale. So the Niagara Falls is part of the Niagara Escarpment, which is like basically a seawall, an ancient, it could be ancient. We don't know the timeline at all, but it's like the seawall for the old original ocean, right? So it runs all the way up through Niagara, north into Canada, all the way up north between Lake Huron, Lake Superior, then all the way back down into Michigan. So it's like an ancient seabed that's somehow exposed because the water level fell. And it exposed the wall of it is basically exposed layers of sandstone and this dolomite limestone, which dolomite limestone makes incredibly good cement.
Boom.
So when
That's
you
the
see,
escarpment right there. It's huge.
so
It's a massive formation.
exactly. So when you see things like canals, tunnels, carved out areas that Niagara Falls could be, for example, you could be looking at hydro, you could be looking at transportation, but you can also be looking at mining operations. Okay, so that's one thing that they don't teach you. And if you know if history is as mysterious and hidden, and with lots of stories we don't know. It's very possible that a lot of the stuff that's gone on in that area has been a result of mining. You with me there, Dustin?
Yeah, definitely possible mind. That's what I want to get into. I'm just shouting
Hmm.
out everybody in the chat. Keep on ladling. Yes.
Yeah. It's fascinating part of the world, the geology, and just to throw out a little more gravy on that, because I was researching the geology of the area a little bit. So the escarpment, you can hike the escarpment like through Ontario. They have made a trail that goes all the way up it. There's incredible trails, incredible trail networks, and all along it you see the ridges of shale and sandstone, the layers, and they're consistent all the way across. But one thing that's interesting is they're not necessarily level to the ground. They're not necessarily straight across. They go at angles sometimes. Sometimes you see big parts of it that are completely collapsed sideways. But what you see is these waves and layers of rock and mud and whatever it was. So it just opens up huge questions of how this realm came about. And so what was occurring to me
Hey.
was, there's a little Canadianism for you there. What was occurring to me though is that, so all the historians and geologists and topographists, they all tell you, oh, this was tens of millions of years of layers and floods and continental drifts and shifts, and we used to be in the southern hemisphere and all sorts of crazy stuff that they have absolutely no proof of. It's all conjecture. So if you're going to go into conjecture, why can't you compress that timeline and say, look, this is how it was made in layers, there's no doubt. What if those layers all came in floods? And what if they were purposely flooded there by a creator? So
Realm.
the other conjecture is, okay, so say the earth, I mean we're getting to big time gravy here, but say
Keep
the
ladling,
creator,
dude. This is
say the
awesome.
creator laid out a sheet of tin, okay, flat sheet of tin, then started banging it, moving it around, knocking some holes in it, knocking some waves in it, then started pouring layers of mud, different kinds, different levels of mud. Some dry quicker than others. Some move around. Starts to mold it a little bit, and then you get an idea that of perhaps how this realm was made. And it's really exposed along the Niagara frontier and the Niagara escarpment. So just conjecture. We don't know. So when any of these geologists tell you that they have a 10 million year old rock in their hand and that this came about through ice ages pushing stuff down, they have no idea. It's all conjecture. But if you're gonna give them that kind of gravitas with their conjecture, I don't think there's any reason why you can't come up with other ideas.
I
And
love it. Love that. I love how you explain it like that, Neil. Sometimes I have a hard time articulating like that, dude. And yeah. So if that's what we're saying, like we're not right, you're not wrong. We are just hypothesizing other ideas here, because if it's not what we're told as plate tectonics and stuff like that, it's fascinating to me to see what else it could be, right? And we shouldn't be ostracized for that at all. Matter of fact, if we are, that's a tell that there's some kind of narrative otherwise, right? Because I have that intrigue, that what is it type of deal. Man, if it's not plate tectonics, if it's not space, what is it? And of
well,
course,
all
our
in all
faith
areas of
supports us.
science,
And
in
then,
all
and then
areas of science, yeah, they're sorry to interrupt. In
it's
all
okay,
areas of
but
science, they profit off of extending those timelines, right? And expanding those distances when it comes to space and all that bullshit. So there's no reason why you should let them get away with that shit, because there's no reason why you couldn't have a creator who poured this earth like a construction project in. I mean, God is infinite in his possibilities, but there's no reason why in a few years you couldn't pour these layers, mold them a little bit, and set up your world.
yeah, and exactly. And then it becomes what I say is what's creation. People wonder, like, is it melted or whatever? I say, like, a thing that I have come to think about is like creation and the mimic of it. Like certain things that man does actually mimics what creation is, and then it's hard to discern that, and that's where you have to apply the discernment. But I love the way that you're explaining that, Because then if you look at a picture like this, if you can see it on screen here, Neil, we're talking about a possible mining operation. And so if it's not layers, as in what we're told, sedimentary rock and the whole rock cycle, okay, what are volcanoes? That's a whole nother episode, obviously. But this looks like a possible mining operation. Like you said before, gone wrong. And you get a right angle turn here at the whirlpool. What's going on there? Why is they tell us that the falls is Niagara Falls is horseshoe shaped because the uh, the middle is weaker rock, but why isn't that represented 200 yards, west in the American side? And the American side, like we were talking about before, I thought before, and I think you addressed it too. This could be man-made if it was a mining operation, and there were settlements here pre-Columbian exchange. This is a possibility, and uh, talking about it isn't like pseudo history, like some might say, type
No,
of deal.
no, no. Now, we just assume the other assumption that historians make is that all this technology is modern, all these mining technology techniques. So they and all these engineering techniques, and the Niagara Falls itself, the Horseshoe Falls, has been re-engineered and certain areas rebuilt, and the flow of the water is completely engineered now. So they've done all this in the 20th century, which is human ingenuity. Why was there no human ingenuity in previous generations and previous centuries and even millennia that could have worked on some of this stuff too and geoengineered this area?
It's plausible because I'm going to play that video clip of right quick of that guy talking about the buried falls. You want to do that
Yeah,
for
sure.
okay, because
Cool.
that's some gravy right there.
Cool.
Um, this video is no longer available on the YouTubes. It was a channel and there was one video on it, and this was the only video. And pro tip is do not disturb, screen record on the old trusty black obelisk. Hate to say that, but I screen recorded it and got it saved, backed up, and here it is. This is the video that kind of sparked my interest in doing this type of research a while back, because the whole mud flood, Tartaria, whatever, that's certainly a thing, but the way in the scope that I look at it, Ed, is like a civilization here before
Yeah,
Columbus.
and the other thing, if you think just before you play it, the other thing to consider is that Niagara Falls is this huge tourist destination, and it has been for probably since, well, at least the 1950s is when they really pushed it. When you get there, the history and that they teach you is very basic, and there's not really much to it. You stand there at the edge of the falls at the one of the viewing areas, and you look at it, and it's cool, it's interesting, but there's got to be more. There's got to be more to it. Why they made it such a destination, such a pilgrimage place, when you start diving deep into some of the structures and, like we said, some of the geoengineering that was probably done to it, and there's got to be more to it. Whether it's ley lines, whether I mean, it's the sky's the limit. But the
Think
fact that
about it,
they
Neil.
drag generations and generations of people there when it's nice, it's cool, but it's not the be all and the end all. So yeah, go ahead with what you're going to talk about there with
Oh,
maybe the Star Fort.
yeah, that's Fort Niagara, an old the Vauban style. There's a lot of them, and another thing I'm trying to prove is that there was an old Vauban style here at the head of Buffalo, because there's always one on either side, and we got one here on the Canadian side, Fort Erie. There is not one historically on Buffalo, and one of my plights I'm trying to do is prove that there is one, and I think that I got some pretty good data on that. But anyway, yeah. So think about this though, Neil. The water, the memory, the water holds the memory. Aside from Lake Ontario, the entire system of the Great Lakes, dude, from Superior, Michigan, Huron, and Erie,
Hmm.
all of it funnels in a real tight gap through this strait, man. And that
This is
is
something. This is something
very
else I wanted to talk about. Yes, that's fascinating, and this is what's interesting.
that
Go
energy,
back to the go back to
and
the
then
Niagara
Erie Canal.
Escarpment. Yeah,
Yep. Okay, let's go find
go
that.
back to
Yep.
the escarpment because look at the escarpment. Look at what is outside of the of the line. The red line is like essentially the old seashore line. What's outside of it is Lake Ontario, right? You have Michigan, Huron, and Erie essentially behind the line.
Ah, lower.
So that's another thing that occurred to me, and this was something that one of the geologists was talking about, that the Niagara Escarpment, in certain areas you can find saltwater marine life as fossils in the wall. So the speculation here is that the Niagara, the Strait of Niagara between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario was not always a connecting river, and that at some point it blew up and perhaps created a cataclysmic flood because Lake Ontario was part of this giant sea that could have been attached to the Atlantic or at least the St. Lawrence River, that was a separate ecosystem, so to speak, from the rest of the Great Lakes. And that the water on the St. Lawrence came right in and pushed into Lake Ontario. And the Strait of Niagara is where this flood came in when at some point the dam was broken.
Whoa. And, and then they'd be able to manufacture the Terra, or they may have accounted for it. I don't. Wow. I've I've posited possibly that could have happened with the Mediterranean before on some real crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, but these type of things should be talked about, especially if we were in a the Bronze Age for a lot longer, or we had mining capabilities back before we are told, I guess, which again is uh, crazy out there. But who we are, there's a lot of stuff that's hidden from us. Okay, so we have the right, I believe, to ask these questions, and I think why was the falls frozen before too? That's another question that I like to go in with you. Or why, when I brought up those pictures and they were like, you see the ice hill underneath the falls, was the level of the river lower before, which allowed it to be frozen over like that? Because it doesn't do that anymore. The ice bridge that I talked about in previous videos, why doesn't it do that anymore? It stands to reason to me that the actual level of the river was possibly lower at one point, and maybe it's because that they were heading it off more upstream here and taking
Mm-hmm.
it in. And I think that these, like Main Street or Delaware, might have been a canal back in the day, and that would account for a lesser flow. And
Mm-hmm.
that might also account for the idea, however the heck they installed this thing, Neil.
Yeah.
Because I don't buy it at all that they were able to install that in the river as it is now. Um, and I've addressed that numerous times.
Yeah.
That has to be, that's another anomaly here that I'm going after. So I was rambling.
Absolutely. But yeah, but it's interesting that it's all, if you look at it holistically, there's so much in the area that Buffalo, like you mentioned, the Western Gate, the Western sunsets over Lake Erie, like there's some magical stuff going on, and I know you've got some cool books on those topics too.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff going on here. I've even thought of possibly that Buffalo might have been. It is the Western Door because of, in the book that I read. I got to get another one out. That goes in the mist. It details what was going on in the 1700s here with the fur. This was the gateway to get into the interior. This was the linchpin. Um, the French had the whole area of Ontario, and they came down the St. Lawrence. And in order to get into the lucrative fur trade mark in the states, you had to go through the falls.
Right.
And
But imagine, and just to tie that back, yeah, like imagine in an old world where there was, and when the so-called contact was made in the 15th century, 16th century, started coming over. But imagine if there was still the memory of an old world where Lake Ontario was essentially part of an ocean, and this was the connecting point from the ocean to the interior, water-wise.
gravy.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
there's
is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here, guys. Everybody in the chat, what's up? Thanks for stopping in. Hopefully we're ladling enough gravy for your appetites. Okay, so let's play that video right quick to give some context as to. I think this guy does a really good job of articulating the possibility of those the Sholkopf and those power generating stations that are actually inside the gorge. Now, I don't think you know what sticks out to me, Neil, is when I'm going through these old pictures, I can never find an angle
Mhm.
that where this power station is in. Okay, I forget. I don't know what this one's called. This is the old one, and
Mhm.
this is the one that might have been there back in the day. But I don't know if this one was buried. But you can see on the side, it's possible, right?
Yeah.
Especially if the water was lower, I guess. Okay. Um,
I mean, those doors, they look like loading dock doors, right? And they look like they're half buried. They look like they should have been deeper. You know what I mean?
so you know what? This guy does a good job of explaining it. Let's play that right
Yeah,
quick.
let's see it.
Thanks again, everybody in the chat. And here we go.
Tesla is a little bit like this. Tesla is a little bit like this. After all, how many people have actually read the works of Tesla? His notebooks, his patents, his designs, and completely understood all the things that he created. I don't know if that's fair. It's very hypothetical and speculative for me to say that, but there's a reason. So this might sound wild, but I think that alternating current, something discovered by Tesla, was actually something that was rediscovered from a past era. So if you look into the history of Niagara Falls and the Sholkoff Power Station, go look at the old pictures and look at the Sholkoff Power buildings in particular. And I'll tell you what I saw when I looked at the various pictures. You have this old picture which shows all the old industry at the top of the falls, nice and neatly. The water from the canal was actually used and channeled into these different manufacturing businesses. But here we have a very early picture showing industry and harnessing of the falls. And then only until about supposedly 1905 do these buildings show up. And these buildings, I stand to be corrected, are not in the old pictures. So the other question is, where's photos of construction of the Sholkoff power plant buildings? I can't find them. Now these are old buildings. They look like they could even predate 1905. And construction of them, supposing they were built at the beginning of 1905, well, there should be evidence of this. This is a heavily documented, iconic Niagara Falls. I mean, my goodness, there's thousands of pictures of this place. So there should be pictures of construction of these Sholkoff buildings. Now, that would be a pretty amazing sight to see as well, because for these buildings to have been built, that would have been a major engineering feat to construct them, perhaps to even stop the flow of water to bring down heavy equipment to build these buildings, concrete forms and rebar and crane, all this kind of stuff. It would have taken years to build these things. So I don't really see evidence showing this. And here's these mysterious pictures of, to start with, you have industry and the Sholkoff buildings are not present. Then this other photographic evidence that suggests these buildings were built in 1905. I'll tell you what I think happened. I'm going to get right to the point. I think it's possible that the Sholkoff buildings at a previous time were buried underneath the rubble at the bottom of the falls. So they were ancient buildings. Then perhaps maybe with heavy equipment, cranes, I don't know, the rubble was removed. And oh my goodness, there's actually buildings under there. And maybe it's from a prehistoric colonial type of buildings that actually is part of the power generation of the falls. That's what I think. That's just what I speculate. I'm not 100% certain of this. So this isn't a video to state things as fact. This is really a speculative kind of video that I'm looking for input from people.
Now you can't find that video anymore on the YouTube.
Yeah,
It's gone.
that's interesting stuff. And
What do you think
and
about that, Neil? So what he was
well, there's
talking about, just to give for location, where he was talking about, y'all, the old Sholkoff, which got blown up on camera. Check out my Niagara Falls bushwhacking #5. That was all right here. Okay, so you can imagine
yeah, when did they
it's
blow that up? Was that the 1930s or something?
something like that. Yeah, there was an earthquake deep in the place, and yeah, it just so
Yeah,
happened
it
to
was.
pave the way for the Niagara Power Authority and J.P. Morgan to go ahead and go over the top and make that huge power. Yeah, I did
That's
that.
yeah. See, that's the thing. That's the official story. I remember that is that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was a big noise and then a crack in the foundation, and water started pouring in, and then they just had to blow the whole place up. But what he said there's another possibility too. It could be ancient. It could very well be ancient architecture that was buried. It could also, though, have been, if you look at the picture of both that and that other sort of loading dock structure on the Canadian side we were talking about, it can go back to my speculation theory that the Niagara River perhaps did not exist. It might have been a dry bed that was mined out over the decades, centuries, etc. And because you could build those buildings much easier on a dry riverbed with water flowing Niagara Falls, Niagara style, you could not build those buildings like that. How are they supposed to lug the concrete or the stone
Just gonna
down
say,
the cliff and then build on the edge of a raging river? And the current is intense in the Niagara River. You can't just stand there and build a building.
Niagara River is in its own class, and it gets looked over. I'm going to do it right now.
In
Rivers,
fact, it's not
dry,
even considered.
flow.
See, it's not even considered a river at that point. Below the falls, it's just considered a strait.
Check this out, okay? So by flow rate, it's next to none. It stands out by itself. It's over 200,000 cubic flow rate, under 50 miles in length. It's actually 36 miles in length exactly, and it drops 333 feet in elevation. Think about that. Also, the next closest river is like the Detroit River, which is over 50 miles in length, and it's got a cubic flow rate of under 175,000. So Buffalo is a river, or Niagara River is a river that is under 30 or under 40 miles in length and has over a cubic flow rate of 200,000. That's insane,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. It's insane. It's deadly if you get trapped in it the wrong way.
Yeah, it's
But
proven deadly. Yep.
but those buildings down there at the base of the falls, there's no way those could have been built the way
There you go. Check it
Buffalo
out.
is
It's
right
top
now.
10 on the list, man. Look at that.
Yeah,
So check.
yeah.
Here we go. There go the stats right there. Look, the next one is the Detroit River. That was off the top of my head too, y'all. Boom.
Mhm.
It's over 200,000 cubic flow rate, and it's 36 miles in length. Okay, that's unbelievable. It's almost up there with this river, and it's 137 miles in length. The next river up that's in length, closest to in length, is 137 miles in length, and Niagara is only 36 miles. I think it gets looked over because it's so short, but it's a kicker, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And
Okay, so
yeah,
yeah,
just
there goes the dam collapse. Yeah, they got it on. It was Neil, I believe, per the actual mainstream narrative, is that it was random. A random collapse happened, and it like collapsed that day. But they happen to have a video camera of it. You know,
yeah, yeah. Well,
like they were ready for it, and they wanted to see the destruction of it.
oh,
Because
totally.
as I think back from memory, I don't think that they had a heads up for it actually.
Yeah, there
Allegedly.
was another one. There was a bridge collapse too, a little further downriver, and apparently the same
Oh, the
photographer.
honeymoon bridge, maybe was that? Is that it?
Which one? Sorry,
The
you cut out for a sec.
honeymoon bridge, maybe.
Could be. I think it's where the Rainbow Bridge is now. It was a steel
Okay.
bridge, but it came down, and apparently the same photographer who happened to catch this one was also there to catch the collapse of that bridge. So
Oh yeah, of course. Just happened
it's
to be on spot, filming a major catastrophe that happens to result in um, a new power authority.
I know. And the other thing you should show
Oh
is
boy.
in the 50s or 60s when they stopped the flow of the falls. That's pretty fascinating too. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they stopped the falls. It was
1969, actually.
yep, yep,
Dry
yep,
Niagara Falls.
yep. And
Yeah, so this is interesting because I think that why are there's blocks at the bottom of the Niagara or the American side and not the Canadian side, right? That's
something collapsed, man, for sure.
or they
Well,
like
can't say
used
for
they
sure,
used
but
it they used the water to rush it like they would the ancient hush mining, right? That I addressed before.
mhm.
Like they used the actual current of the water, which is why you could bring in the idea that, I mean, this is the Canadian side right here. Maybe people don't realize that. These are the Canadian falls right here. Okay, here's Goat Island, and the Canadian falls are bottom of screen. The American falls are these ones. And if you look at it, the American falls are known to have a bunch of blocks and talus, I guess you'd say.
Right. This was
underneath it.
the rationale for stopping the falls in the 60s was they were going to clean it out. They were going to clean out those rocks to make the flow nicer. But then they realized for some reason, if they took away those rocks, it would probably cause
This is
further
what
collapses.
Should I show this?
Yeah, show this. I think I've seen this.
Niagara Falls is one of the most incredible sights on Earth. It's a natural border between America and Canada, and millions of people visit the falls every year and are amazed by its beauty and vastness. There are plenty of photos of the falls online and in magazines, but nothing compares to the real-life view that you get when you see it up close and personal. The falls are amazing and mysterious, which is why a team of scientists decided to investigate it back in 1969. And this is what scientists found at the bottom of Niagara Falls, which left them so disturbed. Around 18,000 years ago, the falls didn't exist. They were formed when an ice sheet from the North Pole left behind vast areas of landscape.
Allegedly.
North America. As chunks of ice started to melt, the fall came into existence. When the glaciers melted, a considerable amount of water was sent into the Niagara River. It took a lot of time for the water to erode.
Just pause it for a sec.
Yeah.
See, this is a good lesson about history. Okay, for those who are not that into history, recorded history is 6,000 years old. Okay, anything before 6,000 years ago is pure speculation. Okay, our Bible coincides roughly with that, but even archaeologists and historians will tell you there's virtually nothing that they can prove in existence before 6,000 years ago. So when they start telling you 18,000 years ago an ice sheet came, they've nothing to go on but pure speculation.
Awesome.
Cliffs and the falls were formed. By the end of the 19th century, the world's first hydroelectric generating station was built near the falls. Soon it started producing electricity. Unfortunately, the electricity could only carry 300 feet, so everybody knew improvements had to be made. These New Yorkers noticed that every time a gallon of water goes down the cliffs, the falls lose a bit of their charm. It's believed the stones that accumulate at the bottom of the falls could cause problems in the future. The concerns of the New York citizens reached Canada, and an organization that takes care of the shared waters was contacted. They're called the International Joint Commission, and they discovered that something had to be done with the accumulated rocks at the bottom of the waterfalls. They even contacted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for their opinion on the matter. Nobody could come up with a good solution for the accumulated rocks, so they decided to shut down the falls. They were going to do it just temporarily so that all the stones could be removed from the water. In the summer of 1969, over 1,000 trucks carried rocks and earth to the falls just to get them to stop flowing. The loads were dumped upstream of the waterfall for 3 days. A cofferdam was created and the falls stopped flowing. The water was redirected from there to Horseshoe Falls. The locals were really worried for a couple of reasons. First, they knew that you really can't control water. What would happen if the water was rerouted the wrong way, causing a significant flood? Also, they were worried about the tourists. What would happen if they failed to get the falls flowing again? Many locals made money from the tourists. If the falls stopped, the money would dry up as well. The tourists did stop visiting the falls that summer, obviously, because, well, the fall was blocked. But those who did show up, they got to see something that nobody will ever see again. They had an opportunity to take rocks and
You know what? This is I want to pause this because I said this to you before. I think there's some mystery. And I always say go with, and this is a good place to stop and maybe address the whole go with thing that I say in like what's era and what are the blocks, because this, let's say this is strata, okay, and that picture that I showed before will the cross section, okay, so you're looking literally at the cross section of what you would read in a textbook of what the falls are, okay, and that's what this is. And I see blocks. Now when I say the phrase before creation and the mimic of it, when you look at them smashing these granite blocks from quarry, they fracture out in blocks, man. And I don't know how else to say it. So I think when they're in situ like that, the vibrations of just natural processes can cause them to block out. Not in uniform blocks like bricks and masonry, like looking like but I think it can cause something to look like that. And that's what I mean when I say Lego list or whatever, because it's a cool sounding word. Also, I just see nothing but blocks. It looks like, man, I've said that before. It looks like Minecraft.
Well, it would also
It's
go
like
to your
Minecraft realm, dude.
it would also go to your point that the American Falls, which is what we're looking at, is possibly a man-made falls, because a natural fall, like for it to chip off blocks like that, is not a natural thing. I mean, that would
How hard would it be for them to carve out this little area right here when
right.
they were making canals way back? It's this exact. I think the Canadian side was the natural one, or even like you said back in the day, maybe a huge dam. Because look at these. Are these all old weirs?
Hmm.
And then how hard would it be to make this side? Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah. 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 So somehow they diverted the flow over there to dam up the Canadian Falls at some point. And this, because yeah, like if this was natural, just thinking another, and we might not live to see it, but the next generation might. It's just going to keep chipping away, because those are huge blocks. Those aren't just That's just not natural erosion there. That's like huge blocks of stuff that probably was not built, so to speak, to take that flow.
Dude, that might be the Achilles heel though of the whole history thing, because I don't know if I see that actually happening. They say like what, a foot a year, or am I mistaken? Is it like an inch a year?
Hmm.
I think this is just like staying right there, and the geological time frame kind of fits into how they explain this, because those rocks were crumbled by the actual natural movement of the water. But
Or it was
if
some
they,
kind of man-made structure
yeah, that's what I'm saying,
that was
possibly,
flooded out.
and they used it to like ancient hush mining,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
maybe allegedly hushing
Allegedly.
mining. This is an interesting thing to look up.
Yeah, and if you joined us late here, the mining connection is that the limestone in the Niagara Escarpment is very valuable, and was used probably to build all the buildings in Toronto, for example. A lot of old world architecture was in Toronto, across the lake. Buffalo's got tons of old world architecture that was, somehow built with cement, and that comes from the lime that they mined, and they still to this day mine lime out of the escarpment areas.
When I mentioned that hushing, all I want to address is that they were doing this back in the day, where they would use a torrent of water to flood out an area.
Hmm.
And Dan Carlin, I got a clip, tells about how the Tartars, oh boy, Tartaria, shout out to Tartaria. The Tartars were actually using this concept, or this actual process, to flood out villages. And
Sure.
one specific time, the dam burst, and a bunch of the slaves that were actually constructing the dam died.
And if you say, "Oh, why would that ever happen?" Well, China did it. What, 20 years ago? They flooded out the entire, what was it, the Yangtze River Valley?
That
They
also happens when municipalities like don't dredge, right? And then all those floods that are happening maybe in Germany now and South America. Philip and I have talked about that before. Like if you have to maintain those waterways, and when the silt builds up and builds up and builds up, and you get a 50-year rain or whatever, it can wash out. And those that could be done purposely. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So what do you think about this, Neil? We were talking about this before. Might as well address it.
Yeah, so
Um,
I mean, I've been to the real Jerusalem. So this is you tell the people where you found this.
in my regular Gulliver's Travels for my research, doing stuff on this area, this is a book from archive.org, and it's a book that I didn't look up. So this is the Falls of Niagara and the city of Jerusalem. Okay. People have questioned before, like I was trying to put this up like they are the same place. I'm sorry if you guys misunderstood that. No, I'm just showcasing the fact that this book put them side by side, and I find it very interesting because they do kind of sort of look similar layout, I guess, is what I think this is trying to convey. But I'm not saying that they are the same place. It's just a very interesting picture. And I've left a link for it before, but I haven't read exactly what it's trying to convey in the picture. So that is a good thing. I mean, this is just a huge book. Not really a huge book. It's 30 pages, but I did not go through it and read and extrapolate what they're trying to get at.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because in light of all the old world research and some of the stuff that Big Bear brought up on his streams, that the original, the true, that this may have been America, may have been the Holy Land, or France may have been the Holy Land, or because I mean, if you go to the Middle East, yeah, it's a little tough to believe that some things happened there,
1840s.
especially with regards to the New Testament. But this, when it comes to America being the quote New World, again, that could be a gravel. They went over, conquered the North American continent, and called it the New World, but it could very well have been the Old World that they retook. And there's, with the ancient architecture all around America, you gotta speculate at least what some of this stuff could have been. And if you look at the falls, and if you compare those two pictures there, I don't know if we'd have to look at what this author was getting at with those two pictures, but there are similarities there, and obviously the falls is a wrecked version of what the old Jerusalem would have been, because that it had all the nice buildings, walls, and what Niagara Falls looks like is a bunch of wrecked walls, like it could be an exterior wall of its great civilization that just is wrecked now, collapsed, flooded out, whatever, mined out.
I have a relevant clip for that. Are you familiar with UBTV?
University of Buffalo?
No, it's a channel on YouTube. You know what? If it's not too long, because about ancient America.
Mm-hmm.
It is short. Listen to this. This dude's research is great.
Quote, "The cradle of symbolism used in all masonry is placed by many of the best authorities in that country which they believe was first inhabited, i.e. the plateau of Tartary, and from there transmitted to this generation by the sages of India, Persia, Ethiopia, and Egypt. We are not indebted to ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America."
Right.
The 1840s, the first fairly extensive study of mound sites was conducted by two men working out of Chile. 1840s, the first
That wasn't it, but I have the one from Dan Carlin talking about how the Tartars used the water to flood out a city, and I want to play that right quick.
Cannon fodder. In this case, they have this very dangerous idea to dam up the Yellow River and then unleash the water onto one of these cities that they're besieging. They don't have siege weapons, but they can use the river. They don't want to conduct this dam building themselves because it's extraordinarily dangerous, so they make all these civilians that they've captured do it, and halfway through the process, the dam bursts.
Boom. So he's talking about them using the hush mining tactic, or hush mining as a tactic to flood people out, which is, I think, possibly what they would use to cover over ancient structures, possibly on the American side of the falls. Also,
and
the tunnels. I'll pull that up. The one that I brought up earlier, possible tunnel of the shelf. What this is? So they have everything needed. This is the old tunnel. Okay. They have the tunnel needed, have the lower river needed, or they have the bedrock marked, they have the upper river marked. Then you got these two cavities, allegedly, that look like straight up vaults. And that's always been a quandary to me. And what is that? What do you think that we're looking at there? It just fascinates me that they're not marked at all. And I have articles that corroborate there being a lot of tunnels under the city of Buffalo and vaults.
Yeah, and all I can tell you there is that city of Toronto is the same thing. There's a major underground city in Toronto. Now, there's different parts of it. There is the underground shopping districts that connect all the high-rise buildings. Those were engineered when they built the skyscrapers, but at the same time, there were tunnels already there that they worked with and expanded, etc. Then there's other areas right by the lakeshore where there are vaults. I have this on personal authority from an engineer. They're digging for a new subway along the lakeshore right now. They come across vaults, giant empty areas that they can't explain. And when they can't explain it, and if they can hide it, because if they revealed it, it would cause major disruption to their project. They flood those things out and they just move along, right? So there is stuff, and then there's other ancient tunnels that are well documented. There's videos on YouTube of people exploring them too. So the whole area is full of underground.
Yeah, in that article, the old owner of the actual Goat Island, the Jane Porter, the one that I read the last video, they were trying to get at her property because they wanted to either get at the tunnels, make them, or I would think probably find them and see what's going on in there. Yeah, so again, and it all leads to and lends credence to the idea that there was ancient America here. That's what one thing I think we're seeing with the mud flood is that it's not necessarily mud flood, that it's overgrowth. And it's just convenient to say mud flood because it looks like that. Meanwhile, it's possibly these were ruins. And that's why I'm a little suspect about any kind of building above ground, aside from the power generating plants and stuff like that. But the architecture, impossible architecture about the Pan Am, man, that's still up in the air. I'm still leaning towards that stuff's obviously possible. Look at the build out of the old cities like Constantinople. There's a specific type of architecture that's done with masons, and they know how to build stuff. And if anything, we see these pictures that are vanilla sky or they look fake. Maybe it's not because that the buildings were here before. Maybe it's because they're just trying to hide that technique of building. I mean, we know they use block and tackle. One dude, C. Vasilis, said before, brought up a great point. They may have used dirigibles as leverage to move some of these blocks, and they could set up tracks anywhere. So it's not necessarily for me right now, the architecture above ground, that's the gravy. If it was above ground, it might have been built after the Columbian Exposition, possibly. There's probably some buildings that are here that are older. I don't know, but it's the infrastructure and the tunnels and the vaults they talk about, which really piqued my interest. And then when you read an article that's relevant, like last week it came out, referring to them, and there's still active investigations going on about that property rights that she got swindled out of. Yeah, there's some gravy going on here, big time. And if nothing else, I love sharing it, and I'm so glad that you came on and ladled some gravy with me, Neil.
Oh, I was on mute there for a second. Sorry, dude. I was about to say, just to add to
No
that
problem.
point, maybe we
I
should
was
end
rattling.
up. We should end in a couple minutes, but yeah, just to add to that point, and specifically about Jerusalem, in the Bible, when King David, how did King David conquer Jerusalem? Through the underground tunnels, right? This stuff has been there for God knows how many thousands of years. These layers upon layers of civilization that we don't know. We just have no idea about what the timeline is. Like I said at the beginning, we only have 6,000 years of recorded history. We don't know what's happened in there's great sections of that 6,000 years that are very sketchy. And who knows what's happened before that? We just have no idea. There's no way to tell.
That's a great way to end it, dude, because I'd like to say everybody has these pictures in their textbook, and there's layers. Maybe the layers of strata are actually layers of epochs and time gone by, where the timeline is a lot longer than you think. Because why is the limestone always in like brick form on these old diagrams? That's one thing that really piqued my interest, is like, is it just showing the layers of time that's gone by on top of, instead of it being like tectonic plates, like I said earlier, is
Well,
that
it's a metaphor. It's a
literally the cyclical
metaphor,
nature of things being shown to us right there in
and
our textbooks.
we may have touched on a metaphor that they use in Hollywood, and this could be the last point I make. you see in a lot when you once you start looking for these things in movies, you never stop seeing them. One of the big set design things that they use in Hollywood, and we don't know exactly what they're trying to say, but maybe it is to say with all with it has to do with the epochs of time. There's always red brick with with peeling plaster on a wall, on an old wall, in an alley, in an old building, et cetera, et cetera. You've seen it before, eh? Ghostbusters had it. Like there's tons of movies that have it. Look for it when
Definitely.
you're watching movies, guys. Big Hollywood movies. Red brick with peeling plaster coming off it. Could be a
And
metaphor for time.
how about this too? How did the Mayans figure out the Baktun time? I mean, that's one thing that modern researchers have. They have no idea how they had so long time period. They have the short, the medium, and the long, which is a
Mhm.
Baktun. It stands to reason that a logical thought progression would be that we were here a lot longer, and they were able to see it and track it for the 6,000 years of recorded history. What happened before that? What's in the Smithsonian and the Vatican Library?
Crazy stuff. All right, man. Well, we should
Yeah,
wrap up,
that was awesome.
you're not really bushwhacking buffalo until you go over the falls in a barrel, man. So we're waiting. We're all waiting.
We'll be there soon. We'll set that one up. It's on the back burner, simmering, some gravy.
You go and I'll film it because
Hey,
we got the good
Neil,
view from the Canadian side.
thank you very much for showing up and coming on the show. We'll do this again, and if not sooner, later, we'll still do it. It'll be a compendium of work leading up to getting together and bushwhacking the Niagara Falls
Got it.
together, brother. So
Awesome.
thanks everybody for showing up, and again, thanks Neil, TorontoJewBear. We'll be in touch, brother.
All right. Thanks, Lesson.
Yep.
Take care.
Take
Go
care, man.
Bills. Go Bills.
That's right. Go
2022.
Bills. Okay, what's up, everybody? I am going to end it out also in about a couple minutes, but I really appreciate you guys showing up, and I'm glad Neil came by also. I think that he really hit on some good points, and I hope I wasn't rambling too much and got too excited. So how's everybody doing on this Tuesday night? So that was a presentation of Niagara Falls, little ping pong session back and forth with Neil and I. Appreciate it. Robert Kovacs, good to see you. Always showing up. Tall Oaks, that's a great name. Even the mighty oak must give a little in the wind. That's great advice right there. Robert, Chris Crowder. Good to see you. NEO Drifter. Yeah, you know what? NEO Drifter or Neo Drifter. Check out my video regarding the timeline. Oh, where we go. Bushwhacking the timeline. I posit the idea that the Byzantium period might be where they added some years. But Zaralath, good to see you. I appreciate that feedback, man. Thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate it. You never know if things go off without a hitch, or, you know, there's always something that happens. Robbie Rad there, what's up? We're going to be getting out and doing some more boots on the ground with my homie here, Robbie Rad. Full rip bear. If you remember, he used to maybe even still does ride the four-wheeler or the snowmobile on the frozen Erie Canal. Robbie I did Lockport with, and the other day we did the Two Towers. That's Robbie's stomping ground out there. So we'll be doing some more reporting on the Western Door. Robbie knows the native gravy real well, and native history, and Vauban style forts. I got more research to share with you guys. So I really appreciate you coming by. Please like, share, subscribe. I'm going to close out now, coming up on 1 hour. So I'll probably be putting out another Boots on the Ground soon. And it'll probably be with Robbie Radbear. So as always, I'll keep wandering. I'll definitely keep sleuthing and ladling the gravy and sharing as I go. So catch you on the next one. Thanks again. Much love, you.